What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the JT Sports Podcast, aka JT Sports Live. I'm glad that you guys are joining me on this Feel Good Friday. We weren't able to go live yesterday because we had a bad thunderstorm that knocked out the internet. The people had to go up to the towers and fix it, but we're back. I really missed you guys. I got a really exciting episode for you guys today. We're going to be discussing who's more important to the New York Giants' success, Daniel Jones or Saquon Barkley. We're going to be going over the NFL's most improved offenses going into this season, why I believe the New Orleans Saints are going to disappoint this year. Chip Kelly, I think that he has UCLA Football trending in the right direction as they get ready to make their move along with USC to the Big Ten Conference. And lastly, I'm going to be responding to a viewer question who wrote in and asked, can the Cincinnati Bengals beat the Kansas City Chiefs for the AFC this year? Before we begin, if you haven't already, make sure that you guys leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new. Remember that you can listen to the podcast not just on YouTube, but on all podcasting platforms and audio format. The JT Sports Podcast is available on all podcasting platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon. Wherever you get your podcast from, you can find the JT Sports Podcast. Now, Saquon Barkley has not been paid yet, and he has yet to sign his franchise tender. And a lot of NFL fans are a little bit upset that Daniel Jones was paid handsomely before Saquon Barkley. And I did a poll a couple of days ago, the other day, and I asked you guys, do the New York Giants make the playoffs without Saquon Barkley? And 129 of you guys voted, and overwhelmingly, 89% of you folks said no, and only 11% said yes. And I feel the same way that the majority of you guys do. I think that Daniel Jones did have a really good season. I'm not trying to discredit Daniel Jones, and what I'm about to say isn't me hating on Daniel Jones. But if Saquon, you take him off last year's Giants team, you already didn't have a good group of wide receivers. You didn't have a consistent offensive line. And really the only elite dynamic playmaker that was on your offense in 2022 was Saquon. And during the first part of the season, you were relying heavily on Saquon Barkley. And Saquon Barkley is arguably the most talented running back in the NFL. He's on the same level of Christian McCaffrey. You look at what he's able to do in the passing game, what he's able to do when he gets the ball in his hands. He's exceptional at getting yards after contact. This dude is arguably the most talented back in the NFL. And even though the running back position isn't as important as it used to be, when it comes to Saquon Barkley's impact on the New York Giants, you take him off that Giant squad last year and they probably don't make it to the postseason. You see, just because the running back position doesn't mean as much as it used to be, doesn't mean that you still can't have good enough running backs that are good enough to win you 2-3 games. You see, that's what a lot of people get misconstrued. They confuse positional value with how good a player actually is. Sometimes you do have players who actually exceed positional value, and that is Saquon Barkley. You just don't find another Saquon Barkley on trees. Saquon Barkley was drafted in the first round for a reason. There aren't too many running backs that get drafted in the first round of the NFL draft. When you get drafted in the first round, that means that you are a generational talent at that position. Daniel Jones, we know what he is. This dude is a very good quarterback, but prior to the arrival of Brian Daboll, he wasn't that good, and I do understand that coaching matters, but we only got one season of Daniel Jones playing at a serviceable level. Maybe two if you want to count his rookie season. Saquon Barkley, on the other hand, outside of his ability to be on the field, you only really question, can he stay healthy? So if it comes to deciding who's more important to the New York Giants' success, I gotta go with Saquon Barkley. You take Saquon off last year's Giants team, I doubt they make it to the postseason. And like I said, you can say, JT, like, you can find a good running back anywhere. You can, but you can't find a Saquon Barkley. You can't find a Josh Jacobs. You can't find a Chris McCaffrey everywhere. You take Chris McCaffrey off last year's 49ers team, do they still have the same success as what they did? You see, every team, how they built their offense is different. Tennessee, you remove Derek Henry off that football squad, they have no identity. Derek Henry is the heart and soul of the Tennessee Titans. When you think about the Tennessee Titans, you think about Derek Henry. And when you think about the New York Giants, I really think about Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley was getting a lot of touches early last year. And with him being so good right out the gate for the Giants, it was forcing defenses to key in on him. And when defenses started keying in on Saquon, what happened? You started getting Daniel Jones having more better looks with the football when it came to how he was good running the ball. You take out Saquon Barkley out that equation, defenses can just key in on Daniel Jones' rushing ability and force him to beat them inside the pocket, which he is a pretty good deep ball thrower and he is a really talented QB. But I do think that there's a certain ceiling that Daniel Jones has. I think that this dude is a really phenomenal, athletic game manager who occasionally can step up and have some big-time performances. But many people make it seem like Daniel Jones had nobody last season and he was carrying the New York Giants. And if you take Saquon Barkley off last year's squad, the Giants don't make it to the postseason. I'm going to show the poll once again. 89% of you folks said that the Giants wouldn't be a playoff team without Saquon Barkley. And yeah, the Giants have more talent this season. You got Darren Waller, you signed Paris Campbell, you drafted Jalen Hyatt. But you can find a quarterback who can give you Daniel Jones kind of production. Where do you rank Daniel Jones among NFL QBs? Is this dude a top 10 quarterback? Many of you guys probably going to say no. You're probably going to say JT going into this season, he's probably a top 12, top 15 QB. But you see, quarterbacks that are in that top 12, top 15, 18 range are elevated by the coaching and the talent around them. Elite quarterbacks, however, elevate the team around them and elevate the guy calling the plays. The Chargers last season went to the postseason mainly due to Justin Herbert with all the injuries they had. That's what an elite quarterback does. He elevates the play of your team. He elevates the guy calling the plays. The guy calling the plays looks better with a guy like Justin Herbert at quarterback. The receivers around him look better with Justin Herbert throwing them the football. And for the New York Giants, yes, Daniel Jones was able to be effective, not having a great team around him, but that was more due so to Brian Daboll and how good of a coach he was, how he was able to scheme things up. Saquon Barkley, this dude is good regardless where you put him. He was still producing when the New York Giants weren't great. And if you put him on the worst team in the NFL, he's still going to produce. This dude was balling with really inconsistent offensive line play. The same excuses that people use for why Daniel Jones was held back a little bit last year, you can say those same reasons when it comes to Saquon Barkley's play. If Saquon Barkley was playing behind the offensive line that they have up in Kansas City, he probably could have came close to rushing for damn near 2,000 yards. So if you put Saquon Barkley on any other team in the NFL, he's going to elevate them. Meanwhile, how many other teams can you say Daniel Jones would make better? That's my whole point. That's my whole principle of this. You see, when it comes to positional value at the running back position, yes, we know that you can find good running backs, but you can't find elite running backs just everywhere. Guys like Saquon Barkley do not grow on trees. There's a reason why Atlanta drafted Bijan Robinson inside of the top 10. There's a reason why Chris McCaffrey got drafted inside the top 10. There's a reason why Saquon Barkley got drafted inside of the top 10. Same thing with Ezekiel Elliott. You don't find elite running backs everywhere. And when you do find one, they are a super weapon when you find out how to properly utilize them. Saquon Barkley is universal. You put him on any NFL team, he's going to ball out. If Daniel Jones would have hit free agency, how many teams do you think would have paid him the same contract that the New York Giants gave him? You think that the Washington Commanders would have paid Daniel Jones that money? Do you think that the Raiders would have paid Daniel Jones that money? I'm just saying, when it comes to who's more important to the New York Giants' success, I think if you take Saquon Barkley off this team, they have 3 wins less. Stop trying to equate positional value to how good a player actually is. Saquon Barkley deserves to get paid. Stop making it seem like Daniel Jones carried the New York Giants. He didn't. He had Saquon. If he had no Saquon, they would have had no elite threats on that offense last season. Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, who's more important? I think the answer has to be Saquon. Defenses, they key in on him. Once he stopped getting going and defenses started to take away the run game, they had another extension of the run game with Daniel Jones. Not every team is built the same. Some teams are built through their run game. Some teams are built through their running backs. And other teams are dependent on the play of their quarterback. But do you really mean to tell me that Daniel Jones is the kind of quarterback who can carry you throughout a 17-game regular season with not a great team around him? I don't think so. And I think that a lot of Giants fans are just trying to get excited about Daniel Jones and trying to gas this man up because of recency bias. Yes, he had a really good season last year, and you did give this man time around him, but the division got tougher, the schedule got tougher. Let's see what he does this year. Can he repeat that performance? You remember Blake Bortles when the Jags went all the way to the AFC Championship game and they paid him? Look how that turned out. There's been plenty of one-hit wonders. I'm not saying that Daniel Jones is a bum, but what I am saying is that I think that a lot of people are kind of overrating Daniel Jones' value to the New York Giants and not giving Saquon Barkley enough props for what he means to this team. You take Saquon Barkley off this Giants team last season, they don't make it to the postseason. And even this year, if Saquon Barkley doesn't play, I doubt that you're going to get that same level of running back performance out of a guy like a Matt Breida. Not hating on Daniel Jones, I'm just calling it how I see it, man. And 89% of you guys agree with me. Saquon Barkley, if the Giants make it to the postseason, it's going to be because of him having a really big impact on this offense. But without Saquon Barkley, this is a completely different team. Let's talk about the NFL's most improved offenses going into the 2023 NFL season, man. There are 5 teams who I think improved the most over the course of this offseason on the offensive side of football. The first team that I have are the Baltimore Ravens, man. You guys know how I feel about them hiring Todd Monken, aka T-Money, as their OC. This guy is drastically going to elevate the passing game of the Baltimore Ravens. Lamar Jackson is going to be right back in the thick of the MVP discussion. And I was going back and forth with my guy Juice, and I was telling him, man, like, you really need to do your research and do your homework on Todd Monken, because everywhere this guy goes, he produces elite passing attacks. When he was the offensive coordinator for the last year that Derek Carr was in Tampa Bay as their head coach, they had the #1 passing attack in the league that year with Jameis Winston and Ryan Fitzpatrick. This dude had one of the best offenses in college football during Georgia's championship run the last 2 years with Stetson Bennett at QB, a walk-on quarterback. John Harbaugh was really excited about hiring Todd Monken. He said that out of all the candidates they interviewed, and they interviewed a lot of good candidates, Todd Monken was the man who impressed them the most. What he's going to do on offense is going to be way different from what the Baltimore Ravens have been doing the last couple of years when they previously had Greg Roman. And then you actually give Lamar Jackson a legitimate supporting cast. You sign OBJ, you draft Zay Flowers, you couple that with Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely at the tight end positions, then you're going to have Rashad Bateman. This is going to be a really good offense. Their offensive line is also the healthiest that it has been in the last couple of years. This Baltimore Ravens team, man, this is one of the most improved offenses going into this year, man. And I think this offense, with the additions that they've made, have put them right back as front runners, or at least in the conversation, to be able to knock off Kansas City and make it out of this conference. What about the Carolina Panthers, man? Now, the Carolina Panthers are a team that, you may not think has improved drastically on offense, but they have. You hire Frank Wright, who is an offensive-minded head coach. You draft Bryce Young, who I think is going to have a fantastic rookie season. And then you sign Adam Thielen, which although he is getting up there in age, he's going to be way better than what they had at wide receiver last season. Outside of DJ Moore, they didn't really have nobody who could win consistently. Then you bring in DJ Chark, who is a really good deep threat. Then you also sign running back Miles Sanders from the Philadelphia Eagles. So you're going to have him, Chuba Hubbard in the backfield. You also got tight end Hayden Hurst. This is a really improved offense that the Carolina Panthers have going into this season. And I think that they're probably going to end up winning the NFC South this year. They got a fantastic coaching staff. You got a really improved offense. You're going to have guys around Bryce Young who are going to be able to produce. This is the best situation that any rookie quarterback is walking into this year that Bryce Young has. Bryce Young has all the pieces around him for him to have a really good season. Miles Sanders is a really good running back, really talented. Terrence Marshall is going to end up having a breakout season alongside of the additions of DJ Chark, Adam Thielen, and let's not forget about rookie out of Ole Miss Jonathan Mingo, who many people think could be a clone of A.J. Brown. The New York Jets, man, we already knew that the Jets were going to be on here, man. They improved at a lot of positions on offense. You had Zach Wilson, who arguably was the worst quarterback in the NFL last season. Not just him, but you had Joe Flacco, Mike White, and yet the New York Jets came very short of being able to sneak into the postseason. Now you trade for Aaron Rodgers, which although Aaron Rodgers pretty much is on his last leg of his NFL career, this dude a year ago was a back-to-back MVP winner. I think that Aaron Rodgers still has a good amount of juice left in the tank. He just needed a better supporting cast around him. Then you sign his sidekicks, Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb. Then you also are going to be bringing in Mecole Hardman, who I think is going to be heavily utilized in this offense. This dude is one of the fastest players in the NFL. Their offensive line, they drafted Joe Tippmann out of Wisconsin. He was one of the best interior offensive linemen coming out of this past year's draft. This New York Jets offense is going to be really good this year. And they don't need this offense to be a top 5 or top 10 offense. They just need it to produce way better than what it has over the last couple of seasons. Aaron Rodgers, they don't need this dude to play at an MVP level in order for them to be able to win a Super Bowl. They have one of the best defenses in the NFL going into this year. All they need Aaron Rodgers to do is be better than Zach Wilson and Sam Darnold and whoever they have had at quarterback the last couple of years. And I don't think that the bar for quarterback play in the New York is set all that high. These guys haven't had a good quarterback since who? Mark Sanchez, when he took them to the AFC Championship back-to-back years, and he wasn't even a good quarterback. So I think that Aaron Rodgers is most definitely the best QB that the Jets have had in a very long time. I can't even recall the last time New York ever had a franchise quarterback. In all my years watching football, I think that Aaron Rodgers is probably the most talented QB, even though he's up there in age than what New York has trotted out there over the last decade or so. They don't need Aaron Rodgers to be Superman. They don't even need him to be the bad man Aaron Rodgers. All they need Aaron Rodgers to do is take care of the football and be better than Zach Wilson, Sam Darnold, and whoever else. The bar for quarterback play in the Big Apple is not that high. Even if Aaron Rodgers doesn't perform at a high level, I still think that he can be better than what they've gotten out of that position. And with the supporting cast that he has around him, this reminds me a lot of the situation that Tom Brady was walking into back in 2020 when he signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tom Brady, he left New England because he realized that he was getting up there in age. He wasn't good enough to continue to elevate a roster full of no-name receivers. That's why he went to Tampa Bay. He knew that he needed more help, and he wasn't going to get that in New England. That's why Aaron Rodgers wanted out of Green Bay. These dudes just refused to give this man additional help. And I get that he had some good receivers. He had Devontae Adams, Jordy Nelson, and whatnot, but he never had stacked teams. You're playing in NFL now that's dominated by elite QBs and fantastic rosters. You just can't coach your way to a win anymore in the postseason unless you have the elite personnel to do so. The New York Jets have that. And think about this. If Aaron Rodgers ends up bouncing back to his MVP form, without a doubt, this team is most likely going to be in the AFC Championship game. This offense is stacked. They have a lot of talent and depth at wide receiver. I think their offensive line is going to be a lot better than what a lot of people are giving them credit for. And we know how elite that defense is. So if this offense making the additions that they've made this offseason, the New York Jets, they're going to be right in the thick of the Super Bowl conversation. The Steelers gave Kenny Pickett a better offensive line. They're calling it the Pickett fence. They signed some really good interior offensive linemen off Philadelphia. You know, Philadelphia is pretty much a gold mine for good offensive linemen. Not just that, but you traded for Allen Robinson, who, remember, this dude was, what, a 1,400 receiver not too long ago. He got signed to a pretty lofty contract by the LA Rams, and they just couldn't really find a way to make him fit in that system. And he's going to the Pittsburgh Steelers, where most likely he's going to be playing as a big slot receiver. You remember when the Pittsburgh Steelers had Antonio Brown and Martavis Bryant? That offense was really hard to stop. And now you give Kenny Pickett another weapon alongside of you drafting Broderick Jones at left tackle, who I'm a really big fan of, bro. Like, if you see Broderick Jones coming at you, if you're a linebacker or a defensive back, you better move the hell out of the way, because this dude is going to bulldoze you to hell. He's going to send you straight to the gulag. I was really happy when Pittsburgh drafted Broderick Jones. Now, the left side of your offensive line is solidified. You have a pretty good group of interior offensive linemen. James Daniels was the best offensive lineman on this squad last year. You're going to have Chuck Okorafor starting at right tackle. This is one of the best offensive lines that the Steelers have had in the last couple of years. You got to remember that the Steelers were in a little bit of a quiet rebuild. They were old a couple of years ago. They're way younger on the offensive line in 2023 than what they have been in years. It's youth, and there's plenty of talent and depth on this offensive line if one of these guys goes down. And then you drafted Darnell Washington, which I don't think he's going to bring you much this season in the passing game. I don't think he's a great pass catcher, but this dude in the run game is like an additional offensive lineman. He's a mauler. He's a bulldozer. You probably could say he's another version of Mercedes Lewis. Mercedes Lewis is one of the best run blocking tight ends that we've had in the NFL for the last couple of years. Darnell Washington kind of has a lot of similarities, in my opinion, to him. And now you have an elite group of receivers. George Pickens is expected to have a breakout year. Deontay Johnson is amongst one of the best route runners in the NFL. He creates a lot of separation. You got Najee in the backfield. You got a really good backup running back in Jaylen Warren. Now Kenny Pickett has all the tools around him for him to be successful. The only thing that concerns me about the Steelers offense going into this year is the dude who they have calling the plays and Matt Canada. I don't think he's a good play caller. But with this team, there's no reason why the Pittsburgh Steelers shouldn't be able to make it to the postseason, especially with the improvement of the offensive line. Even if Matt Canada still ends up not being a great play caller, there's just way too much talent on this team. Plus the fact that you have Mike Tomlin being the head coach still for this offense to at least not be above average. Kenny Pickett, I think he's going to be in for a really big 2023 campaign. I think his second season is going to be a breakout year for him. And this is one of the most important years for a young quarterback in their development. You remember Trevor Lawrence, year 2, he elevated. Joe Burrow, year 2, he took Cincinnati to the Super Bowl. Justin Herbert, he was really good in his second season. This is the season where you kind of start to figure out if you have that guy at quarterback. And for Kenny Pickett, there's no excuses for him not to have a really solid season. Now, I'm not saying Kenny Pickett's going to put up MVP numbers or anything like that, but they don't need him to. That's never been the Steelers' mantra. The Steelers have always won playing, a style of football that's complementary. They're not going to over-rely on Kenny Pickett. They're not going to over-rely on the run game. They have a team that's able to play complementary football, a team that can be balanced. This team can beat you in the run and the pass. And if Kenny Pickett ends up taking that next big step in development, like many Steelers fans, myself included, believe that he will, this is going to be a team that's going to be in the playoffs. And the last team are the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos, they may not have made the flashiest signings. They signed Ben Powers, offensive tackle, Mike McGlinchey. They drafted wide receiver out of Oklahoma, Marvin Mims. But I think their biggest offseason acquisition was trading for Sean Payton. Listen, the Denver Broncos made an all-time big mistake when they traded for Russell Wilson and they paid him all that money. And it was going to take an all-time great head coach to try to fix this all-time big mistake. And Sean Payton is that guy. This dude is one of the greatest offensive minds in the history of this game. If there's anybody who can be able to get what's left in the tank out of Russell Wilson, it's Sean Payton. Remember, his final season in New Orleans in 2021, they went 9-8 with Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill, Ian Book, and Trevor Siemian, and one of the worst receiving cores, if not the worst receiving core in the NFL that year. Their best receiver in 2021 was Marquez Callaway. So I think that this Broncos offense is going to greatly elevate under head coach Sean Payton. Now, is this going to be enough for them to be a playoff team in the AFC West when you got to go against Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert twice a year? I don't know. But I am telling you that this offense is not going to be remotely bad as what it was last year, man. Nathaniel Hackett, this dude just couldn't hack it as a head coach. He wasn't a good play caller. Russell Wilson just wasn't a good fit in his scheme. Now you bring in Sean Payton, somebody who knows how to get the most out of the quarterback position, somebody who's been really good at being able to elevate quarterbacks and being able to find a way to adjust and build around his personnel. With the talent that the Denver Broncos already had, really their only big weakness was their offensive line. So the only concern that you have about Denver this year is Russell Wilson. He has receivers, Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick. You got Cortland Sutton on the outside. This is a really good offense. And with the additions that they made on the offensive line and bringing in Sean Payton, this offense is going to be one of the most improved in the NFL this season. But these are my NFL's most improved offenses going into the 2023 season. Let me know what you guys think about this down in the comment section down below. Let me know if you guys feel there's a team that I left off here that should be on this list. New Orleans Saints fans, I know you guys are going to hate me, man, but I think you guys are going to disappoint this year. I know. JT, we had a bunch of injuries last year on the offensive line. We had Andy Dalton and Jameis Winston at quarterback. Boo-hoo, cry me a river, man, because you know what? When Dennis Allen took over as the head coach for this team, it wasn't supposed to be a huge transition. That's why they made him the head coach and kept most of Sean Payton's coaching staff. It was supposed to be plug and fill. Y'all make all these excuses for Dennis Allen, injuries on the all-line, JT. Oh, we didn't have a good QB, but yet, tell me what Sean Payton did his final season in New Orleans. Did he win less than 7 games? Did he win only 8 or less? No, he didn't. What Sean Payton did his final season in New Orleans, he won 9 games with Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill, Ian Book, and Trevor Siemian, and Marquez Callaway being his best receiver in the passing game. If Sean Payton could have had that level of success, imagine what he could have done last season with the roster that New Orleans had. He had Jameis Winston balling. Pete Carmichael. I don't know what the hell happened to this guy's ability to call plays, but obviously with Sean Payton not being in the building, he's not the same play caller. And Dennis Allen. You Saints fans now have belief in this man when around week 10, week 11, you guys were making petitions to get this man fired. Yeah. There were Saints fans out there who made a petition, and it had a good amount of signees out there for this man to lose his job. You're not going to be able to make it to the playoffs or have a lot of success if you don't have a good coach, despite how talented of a team you may have. It doesn't matter if you got a good team if you don't have good coaching. Bad coaching does not win games in the NFL despite having a talented team. This isn't college football. Dennis Allen has not been a good coach anywhere that he's been, and there aren't too many head coaches in the history of the NFL that have been bad their first couple of years being head coaches that just automatically all of a sudden just flip the switch. At this point, Dennis Allen is what he is. And you Saints fans can say, man, JT, man, he had all these injuries. So what? Injuries are a part of the NFL. Good coaches are able to win despite injuries. Once again, I'm going to remind you guys, just so I can get this point home, because I know you guys are going to use that as an excuse to defend this man in the comment section. But Sean Payton went 9-8 with Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill, Ian Book, and Trevor freaking Simeon, and Marquez Callaway being his number one wide receiver. If you would have gave Sean Payton the team that New Orleans had last year, do you guys not make it to the postseason? I strongly doubt it. Give Sean Payton a Chris Olave. Bring back Jameis Winston, who had the best touchdown to interception ratio in the league prior to his injury against Tampa Bay under Sean Payton's tutelage. They would have been a playoff team if they had Sean Payton last year. I get it. You got Derek Carr at QB. I love Derek Carr. I think Derek Carr is a really good quarterback. But the thing with Derek Carr is that if he's going to elevate into a top 10 QB, and he's going to make the jump that Matthew Stafford did when he got traded from the Detroit Lions to the LA Rams, he's going to need good coaching. And do the Saints really have a coaching staff that any of you guys have a lot of confidence in? Like, be honest, bro. Every time I talk to a Saints fan, they talk about the talent. But every time I talk about Dennis Allen, it's just a sore subject that nobody really wants to get in depth about. RJT, we just got a better team. Like, it sounds like Saints fans know that this man is going to hold them back. And he will. I think that New Orleans is going to disappoint. I've been seeing people making videos about how the Saints are the biggest sleeper team in the NFL, how they could end up being dark horse Super Bowl contenders. No, the hell they won't, fam. They will not contend for the Super Bowl. And I promise you that they probably won't even be amongst the top teams in the NFC this year. This team has a good amount of talent, but they don't have a good head coach. And you Saints fans can make all the explanations you want to about why Dennis Allen underachieved his first year. And you can say, well, JT, we weren't expecting the Saints to make it to the playoffs last year. Stop the cap. Stop the BS, man. There were plenty of Saints fans last year who I talked to who told me 9 or at least 10 games last season, and that didn't happen. You can use injuries all you want to, but injuries are a part of the game. Good head coaches are able to find ways to win despite injuries. That's part of being a head coach. Every team deals with injuries. This man, Kyle Shanahan, went to the damn NFC Championship with the last pick of the NFL draft last year. Good coaches find ways to overcome limitations on their roster. That's part of being a head coach. You have to be able to make adjustments. And I don't think that Dennis Allen is great at making adjustments. I think that some guys are just meant to be good coordinators, and that's what I believe about Dennis Allen. I don't think the Saints are a playoff team this year, not because of the talent, but because of the coaching. And a lot of casual fans out there, when they judge a team, they only judge a team based on the talent that they have in their roster. And you can't judge a team just strictly based off talent. You have to judge a team based on coaching as well, because coaching ends up holding back talented football teams. You want to know why the Dallas Cowboys are going 8-8 all those years when they had a really good team? It was because of Jason Garrett. He wasn't a good head coach. Dennis Allen, this man is not a good head coach, man. Sean Payton went 9-8 with several different QBs. A lot of Saints news outlets and media platforms out there wanted this man fired at the end of the season. Did y'all not? And be honest. Be honest, man. I just want a little bit of transparency from you Saints fans, man. Put your bias aside and think about how frustrated you were at how last season went. You mean to tell me that you didn't want this man fired, and now all of a sudden you get Derek Carr and you think all your problems are solved? Derek Carr is a good QB, but he's not a great QB. This dude is not Patrick Mahomes. He's not Joe Burrow. He's not the kind of QB that's going to be able to elevate subpar coaching. I love Derek Carr. Derek Carr can have a good season. He could give you better quarterback play than what you have had in the past, but it's not going to matter because Dennis Allen may not be a good coach. I know you Saints fans are going to have a hard time digesting this because you want to be optimistic about your team. It's the offseason. Everybody's excited about their teams, but you don't have a good head coach, and there aren't too many head coaches in the history of this league that have had a losing record, at least the one that Dennis Allen has up to this point, who all of a sudden have been able to turn it around. And please don't use Bill Belichick as an example, bruh. That's just an outlier. Stop going off outliers. Does Dennis Allen look like the kind of guy who will be an outlier to you? Well, JT, he's making the necessary changes. He's doing what needs to be done. Yes. But if you're not a good coach, you're just not a good coach. It just is what it is. There's only so much you can do. There's only so much better you can make your roster until you realize that this man isn't it. I know it's hard for you Saints fans to hear this, man. And if I end up being wrong about Dennis Allen, okay, I'll end up being wrong. But if Dennis Allen ends up getting the Saints to the playoffs, it would be an anomaly because you don't really see a head coach who has a losing record up to this point of him being the head coach who just all of a sudden just flips a switch and gets a team to the postseason. Even though this division is weak, you still have Frank Wright. Frank Wright is a way more proven head coach than Dennis Allen. Frank Wright has gotten the team to the postseason. Dennis Allen hasn't. This dude hasn't even posted a winning record as a head coach yet. He's been a head coach for how many years? Even last year, when I brought up my concerns about Dennis Allen, man, JT was just with a bad organization. Okay, that's your job as a head coach, to turn around the organization, to instill a winning culture. The Raiders made it to the postseason not too long ago with an interim head coach and Rich Bisaccia. You mean to tell me Dennis Allen couldn't do that? Didn't Jack Del Rio take the Las Vegas Raiders to the postseason one time? Jack Del Rio. We got to stop making excuses and stop trying to find ways to make guys look better than what they are. This man is not head coach material. I can go up right now and share my screen and find hundreds of Saints articles last season that wanted this man fired, and those same platforms just all of a sudden got faith in Dennis Allen because they got Derek Carr, dog. If you don't have a good coach, you're not going to go far in the NFL. This isn't college football where you just win games strictly off talent. The talent transparency in the NFL is not big. And if you don't have good coaching, you're not going to be able to go far. You want to know why the New York Giants were able to make it to the playoffs despite not having a talented team? It was because of Brian Daboll being a really good coach that season. If you don't have proper coaching, your players aren't going to be in a proper situation to succeed. Dennis Allen was really conservative at times. He mismanaged the quarterback situation. There's no reason why Andy Dalton should have been starting over Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston was a former #1 overall pick. The upside was there. The potential was there. You weren't playing for anything, really. Andy Dalton didn't give you a better chance at winning, no less than what Jameis Winston did. Andy Dalton was even there throwing pick sixes. If there was going to be anybody who you should start at QB, who you're going to be willing to accept throwing pick sixes, it should have been Jameis Winston, not an aging veteran in Andy Dalton. Come on, man. Pete Carmichael. I thought this dude was a really good offensive coordinator. This dude did not look all that great last year. And you can use injuries all you want to, but every time you use your injury excuse or your injury argument against me, I'm going to come back with Sean Payton winning 9 games with 4 different quarterbacks and having Marquez Callaway as his #1 wide receiver that year, man. I'm going to use it every time against you because that's what a good coach does. Dennis Allen is not a good coach. The Saints are going to disappoint. I'm seeing people talking about are the Saints any more than NFC South contenders? Hell no! Even if the Saints do make it to the postseason, these boys are going to go one and done. They're not well coached. Dennis Allen is not a good coach. He's a good coordinator. Some guys just aren't cut out to be head coaches. And if I end up being wrong, shoot, Dennis Allen will end up having an outlier kind of season, because normally coaches up to this point in their careers, they are what they are. I'm not saying the Saints are going to disappoint because they don't have a talented team. They have a really good roster. But I don't think they have a good coach. You can say the division is weak all you want to, but it doesn't matter if you're playing a weak division if you don't have a coach who is at least able to take advantage of it. At least Bill O'Brien was able to take advantage of the AFC South for all the years that division was down. I don't think the Saints are going to be going anywhere this season, man. I think the Saints are going to disappoint this season, just like how they did last year. This team won 9 games with Sean Payton having several different QBs and one of the worst receiving cores in the NFL. Answer my question, Saints fans. If y'all had Sean Payton last season, would y'all have made the playoffs? And be honest. And that answer tells you everything you need to know about Dennis Allen. If this man was a good head coach, the Saints would have made it to the postseason last year. Even with the injuries they had, they still had a good enough roster to take advantage of an old aging quarterback in Tom Brady. And yet, the Carolina Panthers fired their coach midway through the season, and Steve Wilkes as an interim head coach has them boys having a shot at winning the division. And you mean to tell me Dennis Allen couldn't take advantage of that? But you have confidence now because Derek Carr has arrived on the scene that you're going to be able to have more success with this man as your head coach? This dude just isn't it as a head coach, man. UCLA, I think these boys are trending in the right direction under head coach Chip Kelly. Now, you guys know that I love me some Chip Kelly, man. This dude is an offensive genius. And they're about to make the transition to the Big Ten Conference along with USC next year. And I'm really intrigued in seeing how UCLA fares in the Big Ten, because in the Big Ten, it's way tougher and way deeper than the Pac-12. And the biggest knock that I have against Chip Kelly is that this dude isn't really known for being an elite recruiter. Now, his recruiting classes at UCLA, they haven't been bad, but they could be better. They've been pretty middle of the pack. He normally recruits between the 30s and the 40 range. And his couple of years at UCLA got out to a really slow start, but the last 2 seasons, he has really started to pick it up. They went 8-4 in 2021, 9-4 in 2022. And even though Chip Kelly isn't known for being an elite recruiter, this dude knows how to get elite quarterbacks. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, I know some of you Bruins fans have a love-hate relationship with the brother. He'll have some big games and some big moments, but he'll also have some moments in those big games where he'll end up making a bone-scratching decision, or a head-scratching decision, And now you go from Dorian Thompson-Robinson to Dante Moore, who was the 3rd best quarterback from the 2023 recruiting cycle. And from what I've read and the reports that I've heard, he has been, without a doubt, the best, most consistent quarterback for the Bruins throughout spring practice. And going into this year, if he does end up getting the start, how good is he going to perform? The wide receiving core, you lost Jake Bobo, but you do have a pretty good amount of talent at that position. You also hit the transfer portal pretty hard, which is what Chip Kelly has had to do in order to overcome the fact that UCLA doesn't really recruit at a great level. He uses the transfer portal pretty well. They had the 13th best transfer portal class last season in 2022. This year, they had the 6th best. Well, they had the 6th best transfer portal class last year. They had the 13th best transfer portal class from this past cycle. And they returned 3 starters on offense, which doesn't really give you a lot of confidence, but 2 out of 3 of those starters are on the offensive line. And they got 3 really good ones from the transfer portal. They got a really good left tackle from Old Dominion, who I think is going to be in the NFL when he decides to declare for the draft next year. You also got 2 really good interior offensive linemen who should start at your 2 offensive guard spots. Your running back position, I don't really have any concerns about, because one thing about Chip Kelly, this dude is able to find good running backs. He has a really good mix of guys who can do damage in the passing game. He also has your bruiser at running back And you did get Carson Steele transferred from Ball State. He was one of the best running backs in the MAC. So you're going to be pretty deep at running back this year. And finally, UCLA is going to have what looks to be on paper a really solid defense, which is something that Chip Kelly never really has in all his years being a head coach. Not just in college football, but when he was a head coach for Philadelphia, he didn't have a good defense there neither. You got a new defensive coordinator. You got D'Anton Lynn, who is the son of Anthony Lynn, who was the former head coach of the LA Chargers. And from what I've heard from him in his press conferences, this dude knows football. I think he's going to be able to elevate this defense. And there's no reason why this defense shouldn't be good. This is probably one of the more talented defenses that the Bruins have had under Chip Kelly. They got a really good front seven. Their defensive line is going to be really good at getting pressure on the quarterback. Their linebackers are going to be really good. And something that this conference doesn't really have is good defense, especially good defensive line play. There are only a handful of teams in this conference that had good play out of their defensive lines last year. And for Chip Kelly, even though this man doesn't really have one of the most talented rosters in the Pac-12 this year, Chip Kelly makes his living on being able to scheme things up. Every single year, he's adding something different to the table. And I think with UCLA making the transition to the Big Ten, I don't think they're going to go to the Big Ten and be bottom dwellers. As long as Chip Kelly remains their head coach, I think that UCLA is going to be good enough to be a middle-of-the-pack Big Ten program. And I think potentially they could end up being a lot better than that if they can end up stepping up their recruiting. And from what people tell me, their recruiting isn't really all on Chip Kelly. The school kind of has some restrictions that kind of holds them back in recruiting to an extent. But I think with them joining the Big Ten, they should see a boost in recruiting. They could end up being a program that recruits on the outside of the top 25. Maybe they could crack the top 25 recruiting class every once in a while. But I do think with Chip Kelly, with his ability to utilize the transfer portal properly and being able to get the most out of the guys that he gets out of the transfer portal, UCLA should be a pretty solid program in the Big Ten. And going into their final season in the Pac-12, their out-of-conference schedule is not that tough. They play Coastal Carolina, which some people think could be an upset. I don't really see that happening. I think that UCLA should be able to beat Coastal Carolina. You got to play San Diego State on the road. You got to play North Carolina Central. So you should be 3-0 going into your conference opener, going on the road to Salt Lake City and playing Kyle Whittingham and Utah. Then you got a bye week after that game. You get to play Washington State, Oregon State on the road. Then you play Stanford, Colorado. You got to travel on the road to play Arizona, which isn't going to be an easy outing this year. You got Arizona State at home. And then you close your season against USC and Cal. I think the floor for UCLA this year is 6 wins. And I think the ceiling for UCLA this year, I'm probably going to say, is going to be 9, maybe 8 wins. Now, in between there, if I had to give you an actual record prediction, I think they win 7 games this year. I think there is going to be some growing pains with Dante Moore this year. Although you do avoid playing Oregon and Washington, teams that I think are going to have some of the better defenses in this conference. But he could struggle going on the road to Utah. That's going to be a really tough environment. You know, Utah has been amongst the best teams in the Pac-12 over the last couple of years. Kyle Whittingham is arguably one of the best coaches in college football right now. And for Dante Moore going on the road, if he does end up being announced a starter, which many Bruins fans feel that he will, he could struggle in that game. And really, I just think for Dante Moore, you're going to have a really good season out of him, but you're also going to have some games where he kind of struggles, especially having to play USC. That's going to be a big game. Oregon State, they're normally really good defensively. So I think for Chip Kelly this year, I think that this could be a year that they kind of regress a little bit. I don't think they're going to end up winning 9 or 8 games like they have the past 2 years, but I still think they're going to be good enough to get to a bowl game. I don't think Dante Moore is going to be underwhelming. I do think that he's going to be really good. I just think that when you're starting a true freshman quarterback potentially, you are going to have some growing pains. We don't normally see true freshman quarterbacks come in and have a complete full season where they just dominate. Even when Caleb Williams came in and replaced Spencer Rattler his true freshman season at Oklahoma, I believe, or his freshman season, he struggled a little bit. He had some growing pains. So when you start a true freshman QB, you are going to have some growing pains. But I think for Chip Kelly, for the most part, he's going to be able to get the most out of UCLA in this offense this year. And I wouldn't be surprised if they do, once again, end up winning 8 or 9 games. But I think my record prediction for UCLA is probably going to be 7 wins. But even if they do take a step back in the record column, I still don't think that changes the fact that Chip Kelly has the Bruins trending in a really good direction. Heading into the Big Ten, you're going to have a really talented QB, which is always going to give you a shot, no matter how tough your conference is. He normally is really good at finding good offensive linemen, not just on the recruiting trail, but in the transfer portal. So I think that UCLA is trending in a really good direction under Chip Kelly. Now, I had a subscriber that DM'd me on Instagram, and he asked me the question of if I believe that the Cincinnati Bengals are going to be able to dethrone the Kansas City Chiefs for the AFC this year. Now, I'm going to put the question on the screen for you guys to see. His name is Sean_Taylor9. He says, hey, JT, do you think that the Bengals will beat the Chiefs this year in the AFC Championship and win the Super Bowl? I don't know, man. Like, you boys know I love me some Joe Burrow. I really do. I do believe that Cincinnati is capable of being able to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm going to say that. I'm not going to make any predictions right now, but I do think that they are capable. Last season, they came damn near close to being able to beat Kansas City despite having a terrible offensive line. And even then, the year before that, they beat Kansas City on the road in Arrowhead and went to play the Rams in the Super Bowl, which they eventually would end up losing that game. But this year, though, I definitely think that this is the best chance that Cincinnati has at winning the Super Bowl, simply for the fact that I think that they finally have found the answer to their offensive line issues. They went out and they got Orlando Brown. We don't know what's going to happen with Jonah Williams. They're probably going to try to kick him out the right tackle. That's what the reports are saying. And I think that the interior of their offensive line should be really good. So I think with Joe Burrow finally having what should be a top 10 offensive line this year, Cincinnati has the formula to be able to go on the road to Arrowhead and knock off Kansas City. Kansas City's offensive line is a little bit of a concern. They paid a lot of money to a guy from Jacksonville that was, I think Jawan Taylor was okay. I think it was pretty good. But for the most part, he's kind of a little bit inconsistent at times. I think they severely overpaid him. And then they're going to be having Donovan Smith starting at left tackle. Now, we're going to be able to see if Andy Reid can work some of his magic and get Donovan Smith playing at a good level. But their offensive line is kind of a little bit shaky this year. When you look at their tackle situations, they are really good on the interior. So you look at Cincinnati, man, their offensive line, I think it's finally going to be solved when it comes to problems that they've had in the postseason. And you already know about how good their defense always plays against Patrick Mahomes with Lou Anarumo as their defensive coordinator. Travis Kelce, Mahomes, they always give a lot of praise to Lou Anarumo and how his defense performs against them. My only question for Cincinnati is going to be how's that secondary going to do? They're going to have some new players, some new names in that secondary. You lost Jesse Bates. You lost Eli Apple, who, although many people view him as being garbage, this dude was pretty solid at times. Not great, but solid at times. So you could always do worse than a guy like Eli Apple. And Kansas City, I think their defense is going to be pretty good this year. So for the Cincinnati Bengals, this is probably your best shot at winning a Super Bowl. But who knows if it's really going to come down to Cincinnati and Kansas City. It could be Cincinnati and New York. Could be Cincinnati and Buffalo. It could be Cincinnati and Miami. Or maybe we see Cincinnati and the Baltimore Ravens square off in the AFC Championship game. But to answer your question, I do think that Cincinnati can beat Kansas City. And I do think that they are more than capable of being able to win the Super Bowl. I think that this is their best shot at winning the Super Bowl since ever, really. I mean, this is the most talented team that they've had on the offensive side of football. We know about what their receivers do. You know what you're going to get out of Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, and T. Higgins. You know what Joe Burrow does. This dude, without a doubt, is the second best QB in the game, and it's not even close. So I do think that the Cincinnati Bengals are capable of being able to beat the Kansas City Chiefs for the AFC. I'm not going to say that they will, because a lot of things going to happen. And to be honest with you, I'm just not ready to lock in that prediction yet, because there are a lot more teams that I like in the AFC this year, like the Jets and the Ravens. So I do think, to answer your question, the Bengals are capable of being able to win the Super Bowl this year. They have a great team. They have improved the offensive line. They improved the offensive line last year. We thought the offensive line was going to be better with all the money that they spent, and they still weren't able to find the solution. So what did they do? They went right back to the drawing board, and they continued to try to address the offensive line again. So I think this year is the best chance the Bengals have at winning a Super Bowl. And when you think about how they went to the Super Bowl in year 2 when they had Joe Burrow at QB, nobody expected them to make it that far. Nobody expected Cincinnati before the season to be in a damn Super Bowl. So for Cincinnati, this is a team that legitimately is talented enough to get to the Super Bowl and win it all, depending on who they play. It just depends on if that secondary is going to be able to hold up with the new names that they have. But I trust Lou Anarumo. He was getting a lot of head coaching interviews. He plays Kansas City really tough. The defenses that Cincinnati puts on the field are normally pretty good under Lou Anarumo. And this is somebody who most likely is going to end up being a head coach at the end of next season. I think that it benefits Cincinnati having both of their coordinators coming back after flirting with head coaching jobs. So that's going to be a plus as well. So I do think that the Cincinnati Bengals can beat Kansas City, and they are capable of being able to win the Super Bowl, but I'm not going to lock them in as my pick to win it all this year. But I think that this is the best chance that Cincinnati has at winning the big dance. This is it for this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, make sure that you guys leave us with a 5-star review. You can find us on all podcasting platforms: Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. You can find the JT Sports Podcast. All you got to do is scroll down to the description, find the Apple and Spotify links, and it will take you directly to those podcasting platforms. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. We go live every day, Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, weekday. And I will see you guys Monday with another